In the brutal world of boxing, champions are built in sweat-soaked gyms. They run miles before dawn, pound heavy bags until their knuckles ache, and spar in wars that leave scars most fans never see. But then there's Vasyl Lomachenko. When he trains, the gym doesn't sound like war. It sounds like a science lab. You'll find him juggling tennis balls while standing on a balance board. You'll see him reacting to flashing lights on the wall, or solving math problems in the middle of drills. Sometimes he doesn't even throw a punch for hours. To the casual eye, it looks ridiculous. This isn't how fighters are supposed to train, but when Lomachenko steps into the ring, everything suddenly makes sense. Opponents throw punches and he's already gone. They try to cut him off and he's behind them. They call him the Matrix for a reason. It's not magic. It's not luck. It's the result of a genius training system designed by his father. Welcome to Back to Boxing. Vasyl Lomachenko was born in 1988 in Bilhorodnistrovsky, Ukraine, and his road to boxing greatness began with a father who refused to play by the rules. Anatoly Lomachenko, a boxing coach himself, made a decision that baffled everyone around him. His son wouldn't touch a boxing glove until he had mastered other disciplines first. At just 4 years old, while other kids were being taught to throw their first punches, Vasyl was sent to learn traditional Ukrainian folk dance, specifically the high-energy hopak. The dance demanded flawless footwork, rhythm, balance, and body control. For 4 years, from ages 4 to 8, he moved not inside a ring but across a dance floor, unknowingly building the foundation that would one day make him one of the hardest fighters in the world to hit. Every step, every spin, every rhythm change became the raw material of his boxing style. But dance was only the first layer. Anatoly believed that movement had to come before power and agility before aggression. Once Vasyl had mastered dance, he moved on to gymnastics, where he learned flexibility, balance, and full body control. This wasn't just cartwheels and flips, it was about understanding how to move with precision in three-dimensional space. That awareness would later make Lomachenko seem almost superhuman in the ring. Even now, in training camps, he still relies on gymnastics drills like press-ups on gymnastic rings, proof that those lessons never left him. Tennis came next, but this wasn't casual weekend tennis. It was brutal solo sessions where Vasyl would sprint around the net to return his own lobs. The constant changes of direction, the hand-eye coordination, and the demand for explosive footwork sharpened his reflexes in ways few boxers ever experience. The agility and coordination he developed carried straight over into his boxing style. It wasn't until age 13 that Lomachenko was finally allowed to step into a boxing ring. By then, his foundation was unlike anything seen in the sport. His movement vocabulary was already more advanced than most professionals, and the proof came soon after. An amateur record of 396 wins and just a single loss, a staggering testament to how his father's unconventional approach turned him into a phenomenon. Building the unconventional engine. When Vasyl Lomachenko finally began formal boxing training, what set him apart wasn't just talent, but the foundation his father had built through years of experimentation and study. Anatoly Lomachenko wasn't satisfied with the old-school methods that most trainers swore by. Instead, he immersed himself in sports science, movement studies, and psychology, determined to create a system that would turn his son into something boxing had never seen before. The result was a training philosophy that put movement at the center of everything. Lomachenko's sessions rarely began with heavy bag work or sparring. Instead, they opened with what Anatoly called movement mastery. Using ladders, cones, and precise patterns, Vasyl drilled footwork that went far beyond the basics of boxing. These weren't just exercises for speed. Every step was designed to teach him how to change direction without losing balance, how to shift rhythm mid-combination, and how to attack or retreat instantly while staying in perfect punching position. Endurance training also broke from convention. Swimming became one of the cornerstones. Vasyl wasn't doing casual pool laps, he was thrown into open water, where every stroke required constant balance adjustments against waves and currents. Sometimes he swam for hours, covering distances up to 10 kilometers. These sessions built extraordinary core strength, lung capacity, and mental toughness. In the middle of a fight, when fatigue sets in, that calmness under stress gives him the edge. Running also played a central role, but in ways that went far beyond just building a gas tank. Long-distance runs, sometimes marathon length, taught pacing, rhythm, and the ability to maintain technique while exhausted. In boxing, where fighters often lose form as they tire, Lomachenko learned to hold his technique together when others broke down. That's why, in the championship rounds, his combinations remained just as sharp as they were at the opening bell. And when he needed to sharpen explosiveness, he mixed in sprints up steep stairs, building the kind of leg power that keeps him bouncing on his toes deep into the fight. Jump rope was another daily staple. But this wasn't just about conditioning. Anatoly pushed Vasyl to master rhythm changes, double unders, and complex patterns that sharpened coordination and foot speed. Every rope session wasn't just cardio, it was another layer of footwork artistry. Even his strength training reflected this philosophy. Instead of piling on weights, Anatoly focused on movements that connected the entire body. Medicine ball throws, plyometrics, bodyweight circuits, pull-ups in high-rep sets, endless sit-ups for core endurance, and even battle rope drills built explosive strength while preserving fluidity. Lomachenko's body wasn't trained to look powerful, it was trained to move powerfully. Together, these methods created an engine unlike any other in boxing. Technical training. If Lomachenko's conditioning built the engine, his technical training refined the control system. What makes his regimen so unique is the way physical demands are blended with technical precision, forcing him to maintain flawless execution even in extreme states of fatigue. Bag work carries his father's inventive touch. On the heavy bag, he fires relentless combinations for minutes at a time, building endurance, precision, and the ability to keep speed when his arms burn. Power intervals on the heavy bag force sudden bursts, angle exits, and immediate re-entries, teaching him to sit on shots, reset his feet, and re-attack without losing form. The double-end bag sharpens timing, rhythm control, and head movement. He taps, slips, counters, and repositions with split-second accuracy until the bag feels like a dancing target he can't miss. Shadow boxing isn't a warm-up, it's choreography in motion, rehearsing feints, pivots, and cutoffs as if sparring an invisible opponent at full speed. Mitt work ties it all together. Complex patterns, sudden rhythm changes, defensive returns, and reactive counters that demand total focus from bell to bell. Lomachenko also used unique tennis ball drills, like tying a ball to his cap with a rope, forcing him to track, slip, and counter against a constantly moving target. Balance is another cornerstone. Lomachenko doesn't just rely on traditional drills, he pushes stability training to extremes. Handstands, single-leg routines, balance beam movements, all develop the kind of body control that makes him nearly impossible to knock offline. Fighters often describe landing on him as hitting empty space, because his positioning is so precise that even solid contact rarely disrupts his rhythm. Sparring is where everything comes together. While many fighters use sparring as controlled practice, Lomachenko treats it as a battlefield for endurance, timing, and problem-solving. His sessions often run 15 rounds, each lasting 4 minutes, with only 30 seconds of rest. The design is intentional. When most fighters' punches slow down and their form begins to break, Lomachenko is still drilling sharp, complex movements. By training in exhaustion, he conditions himself to fight with clarity when others are unraveling. Finally, recovery is treated with the same seriousness as conditioning. Lomachenko incorporates massage, stretching, cold plunges, contrast baths, and breathing exercises into his daily schedule. These aren't luxuries, they are necessities that allow him to sustain the enormous training volume his system demands. Taken together, Lomachenko's physical and technical training create the platform for his artistry in the ring. It is not simply about being stronger or faster. It is about maintaining balance, precision, and creativity when every muscle is screaming for rest. Mental preparation. If Lomachenko's physical training is revolutionary, his mental preparation is equally calculated. Every training day begins with mental calibration overseen by his longtime sports psychologist Andrei Kolosov. Breathing exercises, heart rate variability checks, even reaction time tests are monitored to ensure his mind is primed before physical training begins. The centerpiece of his mental preparation is what insiders call the chessboard mindset. Lomachenko doesn't view boxing as a brawl. but as a strategic duel where every feint, pivot, and counter is a move in a larger game. This isn't metaphorical. His father made him play chess after training sessions to sharpen pattern recognition, forward planning, and patience under pressure. Cognitive training is treated with the same rigor as sparring. Lomachenko regularly completes number grid drills, memory sequences, and hand-eye coordination tests using specialized software. These exercises push his brain to process multiple variables in real time, the same skill he applies in the ring when he creates angles and anticipates counters before opponents even throw them. Visualization plays a central role. Kolosov guides him through mental rehearsals of fights in vivid detail, not just picturing success, but working through every possible obstacle, what to do if an opponent crowds him, if his timing is off early, or if he needs to switch rhythm mid-fight. By rehearsing both failure and adaptation, Lomachenko enters the ring with contingency plans already hardwired. Anatoly Lomachenko also builds artificial stress into his son's routine. He might suddenly change the rules or restrict Lomachenko to one hand, and sometimes making him spar against 3 partners at once. These controlled disruptions train Vasyl to remain composed and technically precise when chaos erupts. It's why he often looks sharper in the later rounds, where pressure usually breaks opponents. Even film study becomes an exercise in mental discipline. Lomachenko doesn't just memorize opponent habits, he studies the logic behind their choices, almost like a chess master dissecting openings and endgames. He looks for recurring decision-making patterns, when they freeze, when they gamble, and what triggers predictable mistakes. This allows him not only to counter techniques, but to manipulate opponents into choosing the very moves he wants them to make. Taken together, Lomachenko's mental regimen creates a fighter who doesn't merely react, he dictates. Just as his footwork makes opponents miss before they punch, his mind ensures he's already 2 or 3 moves ahead, playing chess in a sport where most are still playing checkers. Criticism and controversy. Despite his obvious success, Lomachenko's training methods haven't escaped criticism from boxing traditionalists. Many old-school trainers and fighters argue that his approach is unnecessarily complex, claiming that boxing success comes from mastering basic fundamentals rather than integrating multiple disciplines. The most common criticism centers on the time spent on non-boxing activities. Critics argue that the hundreds of hours spent on tennis, swimming, and math exercises could have been better used drilling traditional boxing techniques. Some veteran trainers suggest that Lomachenko succeeded despite his unorthodox training, not because of it, pointing to his natural athletic ability as the real source of his success. There's also debate about the sustainability of his methods. Critics point out that very few fighters have access to the resources and specialized coaching staff required to implement Lomachenko's full training system. The integration of sports psychologists, movement coaches, and cross-training requires financial resources that most aspiring fighters simply don't have. Some boxing purists argue that his style, while effective, represents a departure from boxing's essential character. They contend that his constant movement and angular attacks, while successful, have moved the sport away from its roots in stand-up exchanges and classic boxing fundamentals. The criticism intensified after his losses to Teofimo Lopez and Devin Haney, with some arguing that his complex style becomes less effective against younger, more athletic opponents who can match his physical attributes while employing more straightforward approaches. However, supporters argue that these criticisms miss the larger point. Lomachenko's methods represent an evolution in combat sports training that other disciplines have already embraced. Mixed martial arts, for instance, has long incorporated multiple training methodologies and sports psychology principles that boxing has been slow to adopt. Legacy and impact. Regardless of criticism, Lomachenko's influence on boxing training methodology has been profound and lasting. Training facilities around the world now incorporate elements of his multi-sport approach, recognizing that athletic development benefits from diverse movement patterns rather than sport-specific repetition alone. His integration of sports psychology into daily training routines has accelerated boxing's acceptance of mental training as equally important as physical preparation. Where once mental training was seen as supplementary, Lomachenko's success has demonstrated that psychological preparation can be a fighter's greatest competitive advantage. The emphasis on movement quality over power has influenced how trainers develop young fighters. Instead of focusing primarily on punching power and aggression, more coaches now prioritize footwork, balance, and spatial awareness as fundamental skills that must be mastered before advancing to more complex techniques. His success has also validated the father-son training relationship in professional boxing. While many fighters eventually move on to high-profile trainers, Lomachenko's continued partnership with his father Anatoly has shown that deep, long-term coaching relationships can produce results that surpass celebrity trainer approaches. Perhaps most significantly, Lomachenko has demonstrated that innovation in training methodology can still provide significant competitive advantages in a sport that's over a century old. His career proves that questioning conventional wisdom and incorporating scientific principles can push athletic performance to new levels. Young fighters around the world now incorporate dance, gymnastics, and cognitive training into their development, recognizing that Lomachenko's approach isn't just about copying his techniques, but about embracing a philosophy of constant innovation and comprehensive athlete development. The broader sports world has taken notice as well. Training concepts pioneered in Lomachenko's development have been adapted by athletes in other sports who recognize that movement mastery and mental training provide competitive advantages regardless of the specific sport being played. Whether future champions will achieve his level of success using similar methods remains to be seen. But there's no question that Vasyl Lomachenko has permanently changed how we think about what's possible in combat sports training. His legacy isn't just in the titles he won or the opponents he defeated, but in proving that innovation, intelligence, and comprehensive preparation can overcome traditional approaches to athletic development. The genius training that made Lomachenko wasn't just about creating a great boxer, it was about reimagining what greatness could look like. Thank you for watching Back to Boxing. I will see you in the next one.